I have two businesses, to be honest with you. I have my law firm, and then I have my family business, which is what my parents started back in 1993, which is an insurance agency. Like in any situation, drawing boundaries is very difficult. The consultation, we have to talk about time sharing, we have to talk about child support, we have to talk about life insurance, we have to talk about all those things that perhaps you're not thinking about. In my professional life, having the opportunity to meet with the various clients that I've had the opportunity to meet and represent, but most importantly, it's made me realize how the children are affected.
Hello, Karem. Welcome to We Are Mentally United podcast. I am so honored to have you here with me today and just so excited to kick off our conversation. You have a lot of experience in the law field, and I'm just so pumped to talk about that a little bit and get to know you and your journey, and talk about some of the wellness activities that have helped you in your career. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talking to you. It's a very interesting topic, so thank you again for inviting me.
Of course, and thank you for being here. For folks who might not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an entrepreneur, so tell us a little bit about you.
So like you said, my name is Karem Hadjez. I am a family law attorney. I've been practicing for a little over 20 years. I've my career started out as being an immigration attorney. I wanted to help other families get the opportunity to be in this country and to better their lives, I guess, because when you leave the country that you're from, it's not for a good reason that you're leaving it. It's usually to improve your life. My parents, they come from Chile. They were born and raised in Chile. My grandfather on my father's side is from Turkey, and which is where my last name comes from. And when they arrived in this country, they didn't have anything. They were about 23 and 19. My dad was 23, my mom was 19. They barely knew the language, and they just were able to build a life here. They built a business. They had their children, and I have two siblings. I'm the oldest of three. I'm the only girl. I have two brothers, obviously. One is 4 years younger than me, the other one's 7 years younger than me. So I've always been like a mom, sort of, because my mom worked, my dad always worked and went to school. So I was basically taking care of them as much as I could. And of course, they hated that because they only needed one mother, not two. But, it comes with the territory. I have three kids myself. I have two daughters and a son. My son is in the middle. So he has the middle child syndrome with the two powerful girls, females on each side. So my poor son has been raised basically by three women. So I'm a single parent. I've been a single parent for a while, but I am very happy to be there with my kids and be able to be that single parent for them. And even though I say I'm a single parent, their father is in their life. But I'm always there. It's like they live with me. I'm the one that does most of the traveling with them, like the commuting to school and back. But my kids are now 22, 18, and 15. So basically, I'm almost done with the whole commuting part because you're never done being a parent. But the commuting with my 15-year-old, she has her driver's permit. So soon she'll be able to drive on her own, which is another issue that we have as parents, right? We get scared of them being on the street and driving and whatnot, but it's something that's part of life. You got to let them go and trust that they're going to make the right decision. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And I do practice family law now, which I transitioned from immigration to family law at one point. Um, and I'll tell you, it was a transition that I didn't expect to make. And it was kind of like forced on me, sort of. Um, but we can talk about that more later if you would like, or I can go into it now. It's up to you how you would like me to explain it.
Definitely. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and there's just so many things that I want to touch on that we're going to. But I wanted to, say a little bit about like being a parent and having to let your young ones go. I know my parents are watching this, so they can relate. They had to, drop us off every day till I was like 18, and then that was like a transition for them as well. But it's really cool that you acknowledge that, and I'm so inspired by you. You're such a strong woman, and I just can't wait to get to know you more in the next hour or so. But tell me a little bit about like your life growing up. You said you were the older of three. I'm the older of three too, by the way. I have a
Oh,
couple of sisters. So I thought
cool.
that was so cool to relate on that. But like you said, you had more responsibilities. And again, I feel like it's a little bit different you are when you are the responsible person in a family of immigrants, because there's just so many things that adults have to do here. Like there's so many things that have to be done. Like that is not very common, at least in my past. It was very basic. It was, but here there's like every month or every year there's something you have to do. So how was that for you? Like just navigating that as the older child in the family.
Well, it was, to be honest with you, the memories that I have are all good memories. I don't have really anything that really stands out that scares me as a parent for my children. I think that my parents are very hard workers. I thankfully still have them with me. And they've always taught us hard work. And they always said, whenever you want something, you aim for it, strive for it, go for it, because nothing in life is going to be done either free or easy. So they were the example for us children, their children, of what hard work is. My dad, when he arrived with my mom, they went to New York. They went there because my mom had family there, and I was born in Long Island. So they decided at that point, oh my goodness, this is a great place to be. This is a country that gives us the opportunity to have freedoms that we don't have in our country, and raising our children here would be a great idea. And then being the oldest child kind of puts a little bit of pressure on you, because you see things with your siblings as they're growing up, and you feel the need, or I don't know if it's the need or it's like instinct, to just correct them, and be like, hey, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't talk to mom that way, or don't talk to dad that way, or why are you saying that to me? So you start taking on a role of a parent without necessarily thinking that you're being a parent. It's just, it's part of being the oldest child. And then a lot of the times your parents put responsibilities on you, like make sure your brother doesn't fall off the couch. Well, why is he on the couch to begin with? He shouldn't be there. But you're not thinking that when you're 5 years old. So you're like sitting there watching him, making sure he's not going to fall off the couch. And that starts to snowball into more responsibilities, and something as minimal as make sure he doesn't fall off the couch is something so insignificant, but yet so big for a person who's 5, who's not even knowing where the dangers are, because you could see it now as an adult. He's on the edge, he could fall, but he hasn't fallen. So you're not worried about him falling because your brain doesn't work like that at 5. So that allowed me, I think, to grow up faster. It allowed me to mature faster. And I know girls do mature faster than boys. And like I said, I do have 2 brothers. So I felt like I was always older than my physical age with them. Um, but I thank my parents very much for giving me the opportunity to learn to be like that as a young child, because I feel like as a teenager, I didn't do irresponsible things like the majority of the teenagers do at certain ages. I guess, I don't know if the word scared is the right word, or maybe it was more respect for my parents that I didn't do certain things. Um, I never tried drugs. I never, left my house in the middle of the night. I didn't take their car without permission. Things that teenagers typically do. I didn't do any of that. So my kids don't do those things now because I've been open with them and honest with them. And I was like, listen, if you guys ever want like that curiosity of whatever it is you want to do, talk to me. Let's see what it is. If it's something I think that we can try, we'll do it. But if it's something I think that it's not going to be in your best interest, you're not going to do it. Not with me. You're not going to do it. Um, and I think that that has given me the opportunity to share with them certain things, like what the consequences of certain actions can be. I've always told my kids, be careful what decisions you make because there's always a consequence to that decision. So if you think you're a big person because you're 13 and you know everything at 13, there's going to be a consequence to that. And we all make mistakes, obviously, as we're growing up, and we do falter and we fall and we get back up and we keep going. But it's very important to know that those mistakes that you make you smarter. It makes you, I guess, more prepared for what could happen later on with other things as you get older and you become a young adult and then an adult and then a parent and all of that other stuff. So growing up gave me that opportunity younger than I think middle children or small, the youngest children in a family. I think that the youngest children are the ones that are maybe spoiled more. They're more babied because they're seen as a baby, where the first child is more seen as a an experiment, sort of, right? They're like, I don't know how to be a parent, but let's see if we do the right job with this person, this child of ours, and then we'll figure it out for the other ones. So it's like, I guess it could be a double-edged sword. It doesn't work the best with everybody, I guess. Everybody is different, but with me particularly, I think I'm a good sister. I mean, you'd have to ask my brothers, but I think I'm a good sister.
I'm sure they'll agree.
We'll see. I'll ask them.
No, that's absolutely incredible. And thanks for sharing that. I feel like I feel a little hurt also just being an older child, like I said, and having to grow up a little faster. But I also love that, you mentioned your family is made up of all folks from like different backgrounds. Your parents are Chilean and from Turkey. And then you're born and raised in Long Island. So, that's a lot of cultural elements that are coming together. And I guess my question is like, how has that contributed to your journey, and how has that shaped your life?
Wow. So I think this is where I should probably bring up the fact that when I was 7 years old, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Wow.
So when I want to say about 5 or 6, when you start reading, in school, you learn how to put words together and they actually make sense and you can actually read a story. I became fascinated in reading books. So around, I want to say 10 years old, I started reading like the more adult books. And I don't mean adult books where you're like, oh my God, that's such a raunchy book. Oh my God. No, but adult books where they were like made for teenagers, right? Like I remember reading stories about people in high school and how their life in high school was and their best friends and when they had a boyfriend and how they would talk to the parents about the boyfriend and I was 10 and I would read those books. There was a series that I can't even remember now because when I was 10 it was quite a while ago. So I can't remember the series, but it was a series about these two sisters who were in high school and they were very popular in high school, which of course I was not popular in high school, but that's besides the point. And I would read these stories and I would just eat up these books. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much fun. Like they lived in California and they were like having this California life. And I kept thinking and imagining myself living in a California lifestyle, like going to the beach and just hanging out with friends. And I just was so happy reading these books that I was like, my mom would tell me, you're going to be a lawyer. You read all the time, like constantly you're reading a book. We also didn't have like social media. We didn't have cell phones back then and stuff. So you had to entertain yourself with something. So that's what I did. I entertained myself with reading books. And then I started writing short stories. And I entered a contest in school and I won, I think it was like second place or something like that at the youth fair. And my mom and my dad, they were like, wow, we're so proud. And I would read that story and I thought it was like the best thing ever written. And obviously, I was a young kid, so it wasn't that, fascinating, but it made me realize that, hey, you know what? I think I want to be a lawyer. I think this is what I want to do. Thinking that reading and writing is what you need to do when you're a lawyer, but it isn't. It's something
Mm.
completely different. But that's where I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I guess my childhood did kind of like mold me to be what I am today. I don't define myself by what I do, but I do define myself with how I am and what I do, and that also had a lot to do with my upbringing, and how my parents saw me and how they raised us children to be who we are. And we're all different, really. Us as siblings, we're different from each other, but I think our morals are the same and our viewpoints are the same.
Wow, yeah, definitely. That's really incredible. And it always comes up on this channel, but like how your early life really shapes who you are and how important it is to kind of plant those seeds for people to succeed later in their life, like early in their lifetime. And I also really related to how you mentioned that you escaped in books. Like when I was growing up too, technology just it was not this mainstream, like with the exception of like the TVs and channels and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone did not have like a super smart cell phone. It was still a little back in the early 2000s. So, the high school books were such an escape. I still remember some of my favorites, and you just get lost in this world that, these characters live in. But yeah, those that used to be so fun. And now that I'm like in my mid-20s, I'm like trying to get back to reading just because of how disconnected I've been with it over the past few years. Probably just because I have a few electronics that, I could keep myself busy with instead of reading. But I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I still love reading. I just don't have the time to read anymore. So I listen to audiobooks so that I
Mm-hmm.
don't lose, the language and the different words and how they're used. And I think that's a way of um, culturizing ourselves. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but we get cultured with what we read and the different places that we visit through these books. And it makes you can say, I've never been to such and such a place, but I feel like I've been there because I read a book and it was based in that area and stuff like that. And then you just feel like connected to the characters and then you start realizing whether you love the author or you really don't like the author. And then when you listen to the audiobooks, you can even say, I think another narrator would have done a better job, or wow, narrator was amazing. They have this talent to change their accents and then that it's a different person speaking even though it's the same narrator. So I think that reading a book physically is ideal for me because I can make those voices in my head. I don't have to hear somebody making them, and if they're not good at it then I get disappointed. But it's very difficult for me now because of my career and the time. I really don't have a lot of time. And when I do actually get a book and read it, I start falling asleep because I'm so tired, So,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure folks can relate. It's between the day to day and then on the weekends, whatever times you get, you have to, do your own things to get ready for the upcoming week. And then during the week, it's like you're not even available. You have to commute, you have to help your kids get to school, and then you have to work and you run a whole firm. So I assume you're pretty busy.
Yes, I'm very busy. I'm actually in the transition of my career, I needed to take on other jobs when I was transitioning. Because I'm, like I said, I'm a single parent, so I had to work, extra jobs in order to do what I needed to do to make sure my children's needs were met. So at one point, I had three jobs, um, and it was taking up 20 hours of my day working. So it was very difficult for me to dedicate time for myself. And so a lot of the times what I ended up doing a lot of the times was doing the most important things during the day, taking a little break in the afternoon so I could feed the kids, cook for them, make sure that they did their homework and get to bed at a certain time. And then I'd go back to work when they went to bed. And I would work sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning and get up at 6, take them to school and start working again. And it got to the point where um, I just, I was exhausted. And so I said to myself, okay, if I don't take care of me, who's going to take care of them? You know? So I always think of when I'm on a plane, I always think of this. When you're on a plane, they tell you always put on your oxygen mask first, and then you put it on your children. So I thought about that and I said to myself, well, you know what? I think you need an oxygen mask. So put it on because if not, you can't be there for them. And you're the only parent right now that they have. So take it a little break. Like it's not the end of the world. I know that you need to meet their needs, but it'll happen. And I had to take back a little bit of time and not necessarily to pamper myself, but just to give myself time to rest and to actually have more than 4 hours of sleep at night. And it just worked out, it happened. So I still have two jobs. I don't have three. I do have two, but it is law related. I have two businesses, to be honest with you. I have my law firm, and then I have my family business, which is what my parents started back in 1993, which is an insurance agency. So I'm the attorney for the insurance agency. I'm the one that does all the contracts for them. I'm the one that gets served all the subpoenas. I'm the one that has to prepare all the documents. If there's a hearing for somebody who is suing a carrier and they need one of the agents to testify, I go just to be sure of what is being said. And that's my second job. And so a lot of the times that I am working, I have to find the time to do all these things that need to be done. And of course, not every single day you're in court, and not every single day you're getting served a subpoena, and not every single day do I need to be aware of all the documents that I need to do or the contracts that need to be written, but it does accumulate. So you do need to manage your time in a way that you can get all of those things done at the same time, you know. So yeah, time management is very important, but it's also important to remember that you need a break.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been a really, really difficult to just like juggle around three jobs and also feel like you have to do it. But like what was your mental health like during that time? And how did you also start caring for yourself better? Like what were some tangible things that you implemented in your life?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't remember thinking that there was any issue with my mental health. I just felt tired all the time. I was exhausted, and that made me more cranky, less patient. I would be, I don't know, like a fuse going off in like seconds. And so my children would be like, Mom, what's wrong? Like, why are you getting angry? Why are you getting upset? There's no patience with you anymore. You used to be so different. And so that just made me think, wow, I think I'm just tired. I think I just need to rest. And so I started analyzing everything that I was doing, right? And I started putting everything down because I'm a true believer that when you see something in writing, you kind of like understand it better than if
Yeah.
you just try to picture it in your mind. And it doesn't make sense because then you start thinking and then you're like thinking of something else because whatever you are thinking about triggered something else that you had in your mind from before. And then you forget even what you started thinking about, right? So what I did was I put down on a piece of paper everything I do, like seeing clients, preparing for hearings, the motions, the petitions, because even though I had people in the office that would actually help, I'm the one that has to draft all the documents. I'm the one that drafts the petitions. I'm the one that drafts the motions. I'm the one that meets with the clients. My other two assistants were, one was a receptionist, so she would answer the phone and she'd, make appointments for me. She'd call the judge and see when we could set up a hearing and things like that. And then the other person was the person that would do, for example, she would go over all of the discovery documents and she would redact all the sensitive information like social security numbers, credit card numbers, things like that. And she'd put them in order for me to then review what was in there to see what we could use when we go to court. But that would take so much time in the day that we could only work on sometimes just one case at a time if it was a big case. So I started writing everything down and I kept looking at the all the things that I do on a daily basis and I was like using 3 pages. And I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. This is why I'm so tired." Like you just go one step in front of the other and you just move and move and move and move along and you don't realize sometimes how much time you have spent doing this, right? So it's now been 15 years where it's like one foot in front of the other, just go, 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 that you're like, that's why I'm tired. I'm exhausted because it's like litigation takes so much of my time because I have to go over everything. I have to make sure everything's in order. You got to do all the exhibits, meet with the client, prepare them for trial. You're then go to trial. You could be in trial for 8 hours. And then you got to write the final judgment, send it to the judge, and he'll be like, yeah, I don't agree with this. You got to change it. Sends it back. And you're like, why don't you agree with it? My notes say this. Then you call opposing counsel if there is one, and you're like, hey, do you have notes? Can I see what you wrote? So, and you become friendly with your opposing counsel so that you guys can get to the same end. You
Mhm.
don't have that all the time. If I win a case, opposing counsel is not going to give me their notes. You know, if they win a case, I'm happy to share my notes. They may not be the same that they wrote because they interpreted it differently, but we can talk about it. I'm an advocate for my client, but I'm not your adversary all the time. I'm happy to talk with you. I'm happy to see if we can resolve this. And that was what was happening a lot of the times in family law cases. You bring home a lot of that animosity that you encounter in court. And even though you try to leave it at the door and you're like, I'm not bringing this home, I'm going to leave it, it's very difficult to do that. And so, with that and everything else that I was doing, it was just driving me to exhaustion. So, that's when I stopped and said, okay, I need to make a change because if not, I'm not going to be around physically able to take care of my children. And I need to do that. And now my children are obviously older, but they still need me. I'm still a mom. Just because I have a 22-year-old doesn't mean she doesn't need me anymore. She still needs me. My son, he's 18, he's in college. He needs me too. It's like we have a really good relationship, my children and I, and we talk to each other. My son tells me things about himself that are happening in his private life, my daughter as well. And so you're like, wow, I have these children who are actually sharing information with me. I need to be here for them. I need to be mentally prepared for everything they're going to tell me and know how to handle that. And when you're exhausted, it doesn't happen. You just don't, you just can't. Your brain just shuts down at one point.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Your brain, like, I've been looking into like sleep schedules and why it's important to maintain a sleep routine because I'm not the best sleep I'm not the best at like maintaining a constant sleep schedule. So
Mm.
that's something I've been looking into. And when you mentioned that you were just getting about 4 hours of sleep on the daily, I was like, that must have been just really, really intense on your body and but also on your mind. Yeah, definitely. Um, and looking back, in what ways do you think that you've grown, like personally and professionally? Like you said, you've just been through so many experiences of like whether it's in the industry itself or with your family and in your personal life. And now at this point, you're a little wiser, and these experiences have shaped you to be who you are.
Well, in my professional life, um, having the opportunity to meet with the various clients that I've had the opportunity to meet and represent has made me realize that I am in the right field. Family law is a very difficult field of law to practice in. It's very charged. It's very emotional. There's a lot of animosity between the parties. But most importantly, it's made me realize how the children are affected. And like I said, I'm a single parent, but I was married at one point and I went through a divorce, and it helped me remember that it's not about me and it's not about my ex-husband. It's about my kids. It's about the children. And I think that that has allowed me to have a different perspective when I talk to my clients. So the first thing I ask when a client comes to see me is, first of all, is, do you have children? And it's a sensitive topic because some people don't have children because they can't have children, or they didn't want to have children, and so they get a little offended when I ask them, but I tell them I need to know because that's the way that I know how to consult with you. If you do have children, I have to keep that in mind when I'm giving you advice, because there's a lot of other things that are going to be in the consultation. We have to talk about time sharing. We have to talk about child support. We have to talk about life insurance. We have to talk about all those things that perhaps you're not thinking about. If you want me to address uh, Florida prepaid, for example, I need to be able to know how the children are, how long they're going to be in school still, how long is going to be the child support. Because once the children turn 18, that responsibility, the financial responsibility is gone. You don't have that. You're not even obligated to pay for college. So those are the things that I ask about. And then when they say, yes, I have children, we have two, we have three, we have one, whatever it is, then now my whole aspect of the case goes in that way, right? So from there, we talk about, do you have a home? Do you have cars? I feel like a lot of the times attorneys, when they talk to their client, they're asking about their assets and their liabilities. And then they move over to, do you have children? Where I think that, and I'm not judging anybody on how they do their consultations or how they run their cases, but for me particularly, I want to know, is there a child involved? How old is your child? Is this a child that is going to be able to bounce back after a divorce because they're so young that they're going to be used to being in two homes? Or is it a teenager who's already going through all the changes that a teenager goes through? And this is just one more thing that they have to deal with, because that's going to guide me in how I speak to them. A lot of the times, I find myself giving them advice to go see a psychologist because the mom or the dad, either of the two, just don't know how to handle their children when they're going through a divorce. They have their own emotions, and some of them are happy to be in a divorce, and some of them are unhappy. They don't want a divorce. And when I say happy, I don't mean that they're like, hey, we're getting a divorce. I'm thinking more like, what I mean is they're like, finally, we're going to be out of this situation that is so volatile for our family. But then you have those people that just don't want to be divorced, and they just fight against the divorce. And the state of Florida is a no fault state. So You can want a divorce and the other person doesn't, you're going to get a divorce regardless. It doesn't matter. Just one person needs to be divorced. It's just going to make the case last a lot longer than it should, right? Um, so with all of that, I find that now my perspective as the attorney representing the parties, I have a different viewpoint. I don't take on a case anymore that is going to be a litigated case. I decided no more litigation. And I said to myself, what is more important? Is it more important to get them in court in front of a judge who's going to make a decision for them, not knowing who they are, not knowing their life, not knowing their history, or trying to get them to decide what is best for them as a family that's still intact and now breaking apart? It's better for them to make that decision than a third party who doesn't know them. So that experience of being in court, going in front of a judge, putting on my case, being listened to or not being listened to, because you don't win all your cases all the time, obviously. And then you leave the courtroom thinking, okay, we're done with the divorce, and your client is super upset. They don't want you anywhere near them, even though it's not your fault that the judge decided the way they did. And so that made me realize litigation is not the best option for everybody. It's not even the best option for anybody, not everybody, just anybody. Come to a decision on for yourself, on your children and your assets are the least important things, honestly, if you have kids, and I always tell them that. Let's think about that. Think about how it was when you were 15. How did you feel when you were 15? What was going on in your mind at that time? And for some people, it was a very long time ago. And for some other people, it was just a little while ago. And so it's easy to remember. I don't think it's hard. I think even me, that I'm older, I can remember when I was 15. I remember feeling certain things that I was like hating life sometimes and then loving life sometimes. It just depended. You have all these roller coaster feelings that go on up and down inside of you at that age. So those things have made me realize and have made me grown as an attorney where I know which way I want to go. I know how I want to guide my clients. And there are times where I have to tell my client, I'm not the right attorney for you, and you need to find an attorney who's willing to go and fight in court and spend the money that you want to spend to have somebody decide for you, and I have had to send clients away, because it's not just for my mental health, it's also for their mental health. And even though I'm not a psychologist, we do study parts of psychology in law because there is an element of it when you're dealing with certain cases, even immigration cases, where your client can be deported because, they entered illegally, they never did what they needed to do under the immigration laws. And now they're scared to go anywhere. They don't even want to go outside their home. And that causes psychological stress on them, and so you need to talk to them and kind of guide them which way they need to go. And the fear that a person has is so great that it's beyond their control. And that's when you have to jump in and say, okay, you know what? Let me give you some numbers and talk to somebody because this is important that you get this taken care of, So I don't know if I went in the direction of your question, but
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
I got a little sidetracked there, but
No, that's the beauty of podcasts. We can get sidetracked and circle back as many times as we want. But that's really incredible. And I feel like, I've always had that feeling whenever I'm like watching shows or um, just in the hearing stories about people that I know about and stuff like that. I'm like, why is it so relevant for you folks to like drag a bunch of lawyers and judges and, the court into something that is so personal and so sacred and intimate? And it's just like you've really taken that approach and that thought and really made it into something. And you've shown the industry that, oh, it actually doesn't always have to be this way. And I just want to pause for a second to acknowledge like how incredible that is.
To be able to put this out there, you mean in the courtroom, and just talk about the personal aspect of a person's life when they're getting a divorce, for example? Is that what you mean?
Oh, I meant like the fact that you have drawn a boundary that you're not going to get into like litigation, and that you don't believe, very close to myself, I don't believe that you people, and like all the time, people should not necessarily be including all these other folks, so like a bunch of lawyers and a bunch of judges to decide what they want to do with their life, because that's their life at the end of the day, and that's your former partner's life. Maybe they won't be your partner now, and then your children's life. So that's just it's your home, and then you're letting the bubble of your home be completely busted by the law and litigation and state law and federal law, and it can get muddy really fast.
It does. It
Yeah.
absolutely does. Especially when you have like a case that it involves domestic violence, for example. A lot of the times you have cases where the person comes in to see you, and for example, I had a case where this father wanted to get out of his relationship because the wife was very verbally abusive, right? And so he says to me, he's like, you know what, Karem, I need to get out of this marriage. We've been married now for 25 years, but I just can't take it anymore. We have two kids, and the kids were, I want to say, about 16, 15, 16, around there. And he's like, I think that they're old enough to realize that I do love them. It's not like I'm leaving them. I just can't live here anymore. And he said something to me at one point in our consultation that I said to him, I need you to be very careful. And if you have a place to live, I would leave the house. You're not going to lose any kind of rights to your property or any of your assets, but I think you should go live somewhere else until the divorce is done. And he's like, why? Why do you say that? And I said, I can't tell you why exactly. It's just a feeling that I get from what you're talking about. And I just have a feeling that she's not going to just take this sitting down. And so he didn't listen to me. He thought I was, you know, not knowing what I was saying, I guess. And he just trusted the process. And he calls me on a Monday to tell me that he spent the weekend in jail because the woman went in the house, she scratched herself up and called the police and said it was him. So when the police arrived, they saw her scratched up, bleeding. She made herself bleed, and they arrested him. And it was her word against his word. Um, he's like, I didn't touch her. Look at my fingernails. I don't have anything under my, but they didn't go into that because it's a civil matter. But they arrested him for battery. And then obviously they had to drop the charges because when finally they do get to the evidence part of the case, there was none, you know? And so that's when I started realizing, why are we airing this dirty laundry for everyone to know about?
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
Yeah.
When you have a case like that, the person that I represent may say, I do want to go to mediation. I do want to resolve this amicably. And the other person will say, I want the judge to decide. Well, the judge will then say, go to mediation. If you can resolve in mediation, then come before me.
Yeah. And then you
And
just
you
spend,
have to.
yeah. And by that point, you've spent so much time, probably so much money to like get to the point where you already know as a lawyer they were gonna have to get to in the first place.
Yeah.
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 Um, and I guess like before we move on from this, like how has drawing boundaries, you mentioned a little bit about like sometimes you'll be like, well, I want the best for you, so I am I can't be your lawyer anymore. And how has like drawing boundaries, whether in similar situations like that or generally in your life, like how significant has it been?
Well, like in any situation, drawing boundaries is very difficult, you know. Even with your children, you draw boundaries because there has to be some form of respect and it has to be a mutual respect, right? But when you're with your client thinks that they own you basically because they paid you to represent them. And so they expect you to behave in a certain way. So I start my drawing of my boundary from day one. I don't get into the case and then draw my boundary. I learned that earlier in my career because when the more upfront you are and the more transparent you are with your client from the beginning of the case, the more respect you're going to have. They may not like the boundary that you're drawing, but you'll know it right away. You won't have to wait until you're going to mediation to draw that boundary and then realize, oh shoot, they're not for me. I'm not for them. You know it from the beginning. So at the very beginning of the case, when I sit with them and I consult with them, I tell them straight out, I say, listen, I'm not litigating anymore. I'm not going to go to court. I will go to a hearing. I will go and argue a motion, but I'm not going to have a trial. I will take you through mediation. This is how much it will cost you to go through mediation. And then after that, you find yourself an attorney that will litigate the case for you. I have an attorney that I work with who does the litigation aspect, but sometimes if they don't have that cohesion between the client and the attorney, it's not going to work. So I let them know from the beginning, this is who it is. He's going to charge his own retainer because even though he works with me, he works for a different firm. And I'll be with him in court. That's where my lines are drawn. I will be there, but I'm not saying a word. I'm not preparing for trial because I'm not charging you for that. I'm not going to prepare you as with testimony. I'm not going to do that's not my job. I'm there basically to hold your hand as my client because I respect that you and I have a relationship at that point, and I do it free of charge. Where some attorneys will charge just to sit there. Okay? I don't charge for that because I've already charged you for my work. I'm going there as I guess as a courtesy for you to feel comfortable with me because I've been the one that you've been speaking to all this time. And at that point, the client will say, okay, I'm good with that. Or, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'll just pay somebody from the beginning to be my trial attorney. And I think that's perfectly fine. And I respect that so much better than somebody to say, okay, that's fine with me. And then when the time comes, they're like, wait a minute, I don't want that. Now I have to pay another, whatever, 8,000, 6,000, whatever it is to try the case. I don't want to do that. But we already had an agreement. I put it in writing. You signed it. I told you from the beginning, this is how I work, you know? And those boundaries I feel are important because it helps protect both my right as the attorney and their right as my client. And they know what to expect. They know what's coming, right? And I can tell you right now, I have never, ever had a client tell me, okay, it's fine at the beginning. And then when we get to the end, they're like, wait a minute, no, you're going to do this. Never had that happen. One time, my client, we were like at mediation, it looked like we were not going to come to an agreement. And my client's like, but what if I want you to be my trial attorney? I was like, you know, I'm not going to do it. Like, why are you asking? I'm not going to be there. And I don't say it with a smile on my face. I say it in a very diplomatic, respectful, and professional way, you know, and I tell them, I'm not going to be the trial attorney. You know, I'm doing the best I can to get this case resolved. And I think we both have to think about what is in the best interest of your children and then what is in the best interest of the parties. And then think about what you can live with. You're not going to be happy about the decision you make, but you're not going to be upset either because someone else made that decision for you. And sometimes that pushes them to make that decision and come to an agreement, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really incredible to like learn a little bit about, you know, the inside of how this works and see behind what's just like presented in pop culture as like what lawyers do, and really just understand, what you all do. And also, I think for our audience here to understand like how you draw boundaries and then how you keep within them, whether that's in like your professional field or even in your personal field, and having that very clear whether it's like verbal or written agreement in the beginning. And that can go for like literally anything, like a
Yeah.
friendship, a relationship, just talking about what you expect in the beginning so that people are not disappointed later on. And I feel like in your situation, it's sort of a testimony to how effective that is, because you said that you've never had an experience where like you got into a conflict with a client because they said they wanted you to represent them in court. So that's just really incredible, and I hope people take away something from that today. And I want to rewind a little bit because your journey has spanned over a couple of decades and in different fields. So tell us a little bit about like how you first got into immigration law and then moved on to family law, and then from then, started your own firm.
Okay, so when I finished law school, my idea was to be an immigration attorney. Why? Because my parents were immigrants. My parents came from Chile. They didn't know the language. They had to learn the language and work and whatever they could find a job doing, to be able to make ends meet and provide a standard of living for their kids. And that this country allowed my parents not only to do that, but it allowed them to be business owners. And they created an agency that has lasted 30 years. We're like at 32 years in June. And that to me is amazing how this country has been able to provide the opportunity for so many people that don't have that in their own country. Now, I do believe that you need to work hard. Nothing should be handed to you, because that's not what this country is about. This country is about the opportunities for everybody to do something for themselves and their family, to build a family. So that's what that was the idea behind me being an immigration attorney. I wanted to be able to provide that opportunity for different families from different countries. And I represented people from everywhere, because when I first started working as an immigration attorney, I focused a lot on the H-1B visa, which is the employment visa that you provide or you can apply for as a foreigner in another country to come into this country and work. So the majority of those H-1B visas are professional visas. So if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're an engineer, if you're an architect, you have to provide that opportunity for people who live in this country first. So you have to make sure that that opening is offered to a resident or a citizen of the United States. And when you don't find a qualified recipient of that position, then you can go looking elsewhere. So at the immigration firm that I worked for at the beginning, we worked a lot with the Children's Hospital in Boston, and a lot of the applicants came from Asia. So they had their resume, their CV was just astounding. Like, you would read these CVs, and of course they have to be in English, and they did know English and their native language. And you were just in awe of how, I don't know, knowledgeable, how experienced they were in everything pediatric, everything. We're talking about brain surgeries, cancers, illnesses that nobody had heard of. And there was an array of people that qualified for those positions. And Children's Hospital in Boston is very research oriented for different illnesses for the pediatric patients. And they just needed so many people to come in and help with this research. And mind you, some of these people that are doctors in their country are not doctors here, but they have so much experience in their country that can use it to do research here. And that's the majority of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And then I worked there for about a year. And then it was taking me over an hour to get to work. I was living in Kendall and I was driving up to Broward. It was right off of Commercial Boulevard in US 1. It was just such a stressful commute
Mhm.
that I was a young mom at the time, not a young mom, I was 31, but my baby was, I don't even know she was 1 yet. And I had to leave her in a daycare so that I can go to work. At the time, I was with her dad, so he was working as well, but he just, you could never pick up the baby from daycare, never. He always was working late. And so I had to, go to other people and be like, can you pick up Elena for me? My mom had to pick her up, or my cousin would pick her up. And I always had to go to third parties to do that. And I felt that at one point, after about a year, I was like, I'm not watching my daughter grow up. I'm missing everything. I'm missing her first steps. I'm missing her first words. I'm missing all of the things that parents want to see in their children. So I spoke to my supervisor, my boss, and I said to him, I said, listen, I really appreciate the opportunity you've given me. I've learned a lot working here, but I can't work here anymore. It's just so far, and it's taking me over 3 hours just to go and come back from work and home, that I'm missing out on too many things. So I'm gonna have to resign. And I gave him, I think it was like a month of time so that I could find another job and he could find my replacement. And I didn't find another immigration job that I felt as good doing as I did there, because I had experience in law school where I was doing residences for people that had entered the country legally or illegally, and we were helping them get their residencies in the state of Florida, but it's a federal thing. So obviously trying to get them established immigration wise. And I loved it. I loved it. It was so much fun. You go to
Mhm.
court in front of a judge, you put up their case. If the person came in illegally, it depends on what country they were coming from, to see whether they could be um getting the residency, if they qualified for the residency. It was so much fun. I loved that. But I couldn't find a firm that I fit in that was with the same, I want to say, values and
Mhm.
morals that I had instilled in myself, and that my family instilled in me as I was growing up. So I ended up going to work for a family law attorney. And being there was so different, yet it was similar in a way, because you're helping families at the end of the day. And that's what I was doing with immigration. I was helping families stay here legally and be able to build their life. Because when you get an H-1B visa, that visa will allow you to become a resident. 6 years later, you can apply for your residency. And then once you're a resident, you can then bring your family over. It's a long process because it's 6 years roughly, but it allows that, where some professional visas won't allow that, right? So it was like similar in that way. It was very different though, in that a family is breaking up rather than building up, right?
Mhm.
But you're looking out for the best interest of that family at the end of the day. And so I found myself commuting for 40 minutes instead of an hour and a half, because it was still in Coral Gables. So the traffic to Coral Gables is very, very intense, but it wasn't that long. But it was also working longer hours, because when you're an attorney that is in trial almost every week, you have to be preparing. Like for every hour of trial, it's a 2 hour preparation time, roughly.
Mhm.
So if I had a 4 hour trial, I need to prepare for 8 hours. And that's a full day of work. And sometimes there's other things that are going on. So you have to stay later. You don't get paid overtime as an attorney. You get paid a salary. So whether you work 40 hours or you work 80 hours, you're getting paid the same amount of money. But it's not about the money for me. It was about what I was doing for my clients. So that transition to family law was difficult in a way, but at the same time, because I was focusing on the best interest of the families and what I wanted to do to help them move on from that point in their life, it came easy for me. Going to trial all the time was not easy, but you learn to do it. And with time, you become better at it. And at first, of course, you're in court, you're like, what am I doing? What am I saying? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? You don't have a guide. So a lot of the times as an attorney, when you're first starting, you get yelled at a lot by the judge, and you just got to grow through thick skin. You have no choice. You just take it and you learn from it and move on. And that was, I think, the hardest part for me because I'm not a thick-skinned person.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that transition was hard at the beginning, but I got used to it. And then I started my own firm because I became pregnant with my son in 2006. And the attorney that I was working for was not family oriented. So she hinted at the beginning whether I would have an abortion. And of course, personally, that was not an option, and I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So then she's like, okay, then are you going to tie your tubes? What are you talking about? Why would you ask me that question? I'm working, I'm going to court, I'm pregnant, but I'm going to court anyway. I'm going to mediation. It's not like I'm missing work because I'm pregnant or I don't feel good or I'm sick or whatever. That didn't happen. So when I was 7.5 months pregnant, she decided she didn't want me anymore because she thought, and I find this out later, she thought that when I went out on maternity leave, I just wasn't going to come back. That was never going to be my intention. I would not do that. I'm a professional and I would never have done that to somebody and leave them hanging. I would never have done that because I didn't do that to my other employer when I said, listen, I need to move out of this, commute. So I'm going to go work somewhere closer to my house, but I'll give you a month if that's going to help you find somebody. And if you need longer, I will. But in the meantime, I'm looking for another job. And I was happy to work with him because he gave me an opportunity that I didn't have before. So I would never have done that. But of course, she didn't know that I wouldn't have done that. And I think the communication would have been better had she asked me and I would have been honest with her. And maybe if I wasn't feeling welcome there, I would have probably wanted to leave, but I would have said that to her. I would have been like, you know what? After my son is born, I'm just not going to come back. I'm going to stay home with him. So I think it's better that you start looking for somebody now for my replacement and whatever. So anyway, long story short, she fired me when I was 7.5 months pregnant, which to me was both devastating and a relief at the same time because I was thinking, you imagine I go into labor in the middle of trial or in the middle of a hearing or on my way to court because you just don't know. You think you know when you're going to have a baby, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. So it was a lot of worry for me. It wasn't stressful, but it was worrying. So then I
Yeah.
thought, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. I'm okay with it. She was paying me unemployment. I had my son. He was born in August. I got fired in July. Actually, I got fired at the end of June. So August 19, my son is born. And I took all that time off from August 19 until January of 2007. And I thought to myself, why don't I just work for me? I'll work my own hours and I will take it slow because at that point, unemployment, I think, what was going on for like 6 months, I want to say. So I said, I'll look to see what happens. If I start working, I'll cut off the unemployment. I won't need it anymore because I'm working now. And so February came along and I got my very first client that I had put a little tiny ad in what we used to have a flyer. I don't know if you know what that is. It used to be a little tiny like newspaper form, like magazine sort of, and people would advertise their different businesses in there. And I had put an $8 ad. It was this size that said attorney, family law, divorce, something like that, and then my phone number. That was it. I didn't have an address, nothing. So my very first client came in February of 2007. I started the Hadjez law firm because I didn't know what to call it. So I just said, okay, I'll just use my name. And from there, I just started getting more and more clients. I obviously had to cut off my unemployment, which I was happy to do because I was getting paid to work. And I would see clients in my father's conference room of the office that he had opened as an insurance agency. And so people would come see me and be like, this is an insurance agency. Why are we in here? And so I would say, well, because I work from home, and so I use the conference room to see clients, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So it was easier for them because, of course, my overhead wasn't a lot. It was nothing, basically. I could bring my son with me, and my mom was there, so she would take care of him while I'm having a consultation with a client. And from there, it just started to escalate. And I caught up with a friend of mine from law school one day. We were at a symposium, and she and I started talking. She's like, "Oh, I'm working by myself. What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm working by myself." And she's like, "Why don't we get together and work together?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? What do we have to lose?" And we started Law Center of South Florida. And then
Wow.
in 2010, she became a judge, and
Mhm.
I was solo practicing again. And but it was now Law Center of South Florida. People knew who we were. I never advertised again after that. It's all been word of mouth. All of it has been referrals. I'm very blessed for that. I thank my high stars for that because I just don't know how else it would have happened. And it's because when you are a sole practitioner, you build your reputation and
Mhm.
people start knowing who you are and the kind of attorney that you are and how you practice and how you build those, you put down those boundaries at the beginning and you start to say, listen, this is what we're doing. And the boundaries started getting put down early, but they were different boundaries. It wasn't, I'm not litigating, it was a different boundary. Like, if you don't follow my advice and I look bad in court, I'm going to get out of your case, and you would put it in writing. I have the right to withdraw from your case if these things happen. You don't pay your bill, you don't follow the advice, you run your mouth in court when you're being told to stop, those kinds of things, because it reflects on the attorney. And you as an attorney have to have a reputation in court and a reputation with your clients. So that's how I transitioned to having my own law firm. And
That's
so
an
here.
absolutely incredible and inspiring story. And yeah, I think it's just so difficult to like be pushed out of your workplace for being pregnant and then also like your supervisors or your boss speaking to you in the manner that they have a right over you. It's really difficult, but you've came out of that um you've came out of that difficult situation and really that discrimination and build it used it to fuel your passion and fuel your life. So it's really beautiful what like how you really like changed your life after that, but that's still like it's really irritating. And also I think I think nowadays maybe like would it be like okay to say stuff like that? But it's just absolutely crazy that people could get away with talking to others like that.
I don't think it's okay ever. It should never be
Yeah.
okay. The thing is, like, when you're a new attorney, you don't want to be blackballed. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to
Mm.
go and sue them or report them, because attorneys do talk, and family law is a very small community of attorneys. There's a lot of us, but we all know who we are.
Yeah.
You hear a name and you're like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is. I've dealt with them or I've heard of them," so you don't want to be that person that people hear about that like sued her employer because she got fired. So I took that negative aspect of my life and made it into a positive one. And
Yeah.
I even saw her one day in a fundraiser we were having for one of the judges. And I went up to her and I said to her, "I want to say thank you." I told her, because had it not been for what you did, I would not be where I am today. And she took it like I was being grateful. And I wasn't being grateful. I was being a little sarcastic in a way because I wanted her to know that what she did was wrong, but it
Yeah.
helped me come out
Mhm.
ahead, you know. But people will take it however they want. And
Yeah.
I am at the end very grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And I didn't have to worry about the money issue because I was getting unemployment. So that did make me look at it, I guess, in a different way. And it
Yeah.
had the circumstances been different, maybe it wouldn't have been that way. But I think that everyone should look at their whatever they're dealt and try to spin it in a way that's positive. because that's how you learn from it, and
Mhm.
I would never do that to another person. I wouldn't do it to another woman. And unfortunately, in the field of law, sometimes women are very hard on each other. And we already deal with enough discrimination from the men attorneys because they look at us like, what do you know? And then when they
Mhm.
see that you look young, it doesn't mean that I am young. I just look young. And they think I'm a law student coming out of law school. And so
Mhm.
they treat you really bad, like you don't know anything, please. And then you look them up on the Florida bar and you realize you have 10 years on them
Yeah,
and you think you just got out of law school. That's just that discrimination, and you deal
yeah,
with a lot of that in the legal industry. It's just very sad, but it
yeah.
also doesn't help with your mental state because you start questioning yourself, right? You start second guessing yourself and you start thinking, I'm not good at this. What am I doing here? Why am I here? Who said I was a good attorney? Who said that I could do this?
Mhm.
And that's never good, self-esteem wise or any of that. So
Yeah,
gotta
definitely. And just while we're still speaking on this, like you also mentioned like you're a single mom. So like how do you constantly build yourself up? How do you make sure you're like taking care of yourself and you're not letting comments like from other lawyers get to you, like what do you do to like take care of yourself?
um psychologically, you mean? Like to build myself up psychologically that I can do this, that I'm good at what I'm doing.
Sure, yeah. And also like how do you care for yourself? Like do you take time to read? Do you walk? Like what are those little things that
Oh,
you do?
okay. So with the psychological aspect of it, because I went through this. This was a hard period in my life where I started second guessing my career choices. And then I started looking back at my history of what I was doing, and I started realizing that a lot of my clients were happy with me. They were referring cases to me, clients to me. They kept saying, go talk to Karem. She's more of a human than she is a lawyer. And when you say that out loud, you're like, is that good or is that not good? Right? You start to think, I don't know, that could be a good thing, but maybe not. I don't know. But then you realize I've never advertised. Everybody that comes to see me says, oh my God, this person, that person, they told me to come talk to you, that you're going to understand, that you're going to take me down the right path, that your advice makes sense, that you care about the kids, you care about my life with my kids, that you care about my ex's life with the kids, that you care
Mhm.
that that person is not doing their job as a parent. You're going to bring it up in court. You're going to say it to the judge. You're going to put it in the agreement so that everyone who knows that we're doing this, it's for the benefit of the kids. Nobody can come back and say, you hurt the kids because you kept the dad away from them or you kept the mom away from them. No, the reason that this is happening is because it's in here. It's written in this document. Look at it. If you feel like you want to share it with them. So that helped me realize, yeah, I'm doing a good job. I know what I'm talking about. I know that I know how to read the law. I'm interpreting it the way that benefits my clients and the children. And then how do I bring that out is by just telling my clients when they come, this is what we're going to do. I think this is the strategy that we will take. However, if you want to go a different way, let me know. We'll work on it together and we'll get to where we need to get for you, for the kids, even for your ex-spouse. Because if you just think about you and the children and you're not even thinking about them, they're not going to go anywhere near what you want. They're going to go on the other side of the world, and to get him or her closer to where we are is going to be impossible. So let's think of something that you can live with that will both benefit all the parties involved. And so that's how I started remembering or realizing that people are just saying that to bring me down. They're saying that so that I start feeling insecure in what I'm doing, so that when I go to court and they're in front of me, I don't do
Mhm.
a good job because I'm so concentrated on the words they were using against me. And I didn't let that happen. But that takes a lot of practice. It's not something that you say, I'm not going to do it and it doesn't happen and that's it, you're done. No, it doesn't work like that. You got to really brainwash yourself. And then on the physical aspect, I did do a lot of exercising before. And I say a lot But what I mean is a long time, not a lot of exercise, right? I'm
Yeah.
not an exercise person. I don't like to exercise. I don't know that. I mean, there's a lot of people that do love going to the gym and they do love to exercise. I'm not one of them, but I knew that I needed to keep myself healthy. So what did I do is I just started walking. I don't run. I don't feel that running is my friend. Running is my enemy, in fact, because then my knees hurt, my ankles hurt, my bones hurt, everything hurts, and then I'm not going to do it again. So I just said, let's do something that I know that I can do that's not going to hurt me. It's going to be good for me, and it's going to give me some kind of stress relief. And so I started walking like 15 minutes and then I started increasing it to 30 and then 45. And then eventually I was walking for like 2 hours and I would walk every other day, not every single day. So it didn't become an obligation. It was more like a routine, and that helped me lose weight. It helped me think a lot better because I had time to clear my mind. I had time to just focus on the things that were going to happen during the week, or things that had happened that I need to improve or things like that. And so that's what I would do physically. And then on occasion, very, very rare occasion, I would give myself a massage. I would buy myself a Groupon or something to that effect. And I'd go with my best friend and we'd get massages. And we did that maybe once or twice a year. It wasn't even like constantly. But I haven't done that in a very long time. And I think I'm due for that. But the other thing I do is I'm always doing my nails, I'm always doing my hair because I feel that that makes me feel better physically. And not for anybody else, but for me. Like I don't like to go see a client and my nails are chipped or I don't have them, rounded properly, or I don't like to look like that. So that's what I do for myself. And that gives me some free time too, to just sit there and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for myself. I'm going to dye my hair. I'm going to curl it. I'm going to whatever. I'm going to highlight it, whatever I want to do. And it gives me the opportunity to take care of me, you know, but that's basically.
Definitely. Definitely, and that's really beautiful. Honestly, I'm also not like really big into the exercise scene. I like to just do like fun activities like walking or like maybe a little jogging, but not running specifically.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now we are in this like hyper fitness, hyper gym rat era. And I'm kind of over it, I'm not gonna lie. But also it sets up like a very unrealistic expectation for people. So I'm so glad that you're like, that's not like what I do for fun, but I do it to like just, keep in shape and keep like mentally stimulated, which like really that is a big reality for many of us. Like we get physically active because it's good for us, but it's not just as glamorous as like some of the TikTokers are like showing it. Like they like wake up at 5 a.m. I'm sure you've seen some of the trends. It's horrible.
Not
But
even realistic.
it's not very realistic. Like if it works for you, great, but like the majority of people, that's not really our reality. So I don't want people to feel discouraged just because like they're not obsessed with like going to the gym 7 days a week at like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. So that's okay. Like you can take it easy, take it step by step. I'm gonna be doing like my first 5K. I'm probably gonna walk the whole thing, but that's okay because I walk a lot every day.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Because yeah, I'm always ranting about it. And as we start to wrap up here a little bit, what advice would you give to like young professionals? You spoke about how hard work is a big value of yours, and also like young people who are just now stepping into the professional fields, as well as women and moms in different professional fields or like corporate fields that demand a lot.
Wow, that's a really good question because I wish I had somebody to give me advice when I started out. But I think that the advice that I would give them is always remember who you are. Like, don't let the profession that you're in change how you are or what you believe in. Morals and the way you were brought up is very important to guide you in whatever it is that you're doing. Always remember that you have to put yourself first. remember that a career is not what defines you as a person. So if you're doing good for you and you feel good about yourself, you're going to do good no matter what you're doing. You're going to enjoy what you're doing because you're happy with yourself. If you start to feel that you don't like what you're doing because of the environment you're in, the suggestion is look for something else. There are so many opportunities out there for people, and it doesn't matter what you do because, for example, as an attorney, you don't have to be an attorney working at a firm. You could be an attorney that talks to people, you represent them like the way that I do it. I don't go to court all the time. I do go to hearings on occasion, but I don't go to court constantly like I used to. You can do document review as an attorney. You don't have to be in the courtroom. You can do different things. So any professional in any aspect of the world that you are going to start working in as a young adult, just remember who you are. Remember where you come from, and don't let anything change that. Don't allow something that is difficult for you to do to change the vision that you have of yourself. Just believe in yourself, and you'll be able to do that and so much more. Nobody should bring you down. And if they are, speak your mind. Tell them, hey, listen, that's not cool. You're not being professional. And if it's somebody that's above you that you're afraid to speak up for yourself, then maybe you need to move out of that environment because it doesn't get better. It gets worse. When they see that they can step all over you or stomp all over you, they will continue to do it. So to me, if somebody would have said to me, if you're not happy at that firm where that lady was asking me to get an abortion, you should have just left. Just leave. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. Nobody said that. Nobody said that to me. I thought I had to just take it. She was my boss and a woman at that. So don't ever question your integrity. Don't question your morals. That is what has guided you to be where you are and to get where you're going. So I would say that is what to focus on.
Wow. Thank you so, so, so much for this incredible conversation. And I feel like we spoke about so many things, but we could keep talking for hours, to be honest. But I really want folks to really encapsulate that like amazing advice and apply it to their lives. And I took so many things away from this episode. You also dropped some legal advice here and there, which was great for folks to know. But yeah, I'm just so grateful for you being here. But yeah, before we wrap up, please tell everyone where they can find you and your information.
Okay, so my office is in Doral. My address is 8750 Northwest 36th Street. I'm in Suite 520. My phone number is on the screen. It's 786-464-1986. You can call the office, make an appointment, just not even make an appointment, just call and leave a message. If I don't answer right away, I could be on the phone. I'm by myself now. I don't have anybody in the office. It's just me, myself, and I. I answer the phone. I make the appointments. I set up the Zooms. If you want to come to the office, I'll set up an office appointment because I'm not always at the office. I work a lot of it remotely. So I'm happy to talk to anybody that has any questions about any aspect of family law and any kind of things that they, are questioning, even the attorney they're with, right? Sometimes they want a second opinion. Most of the time, family law attorneys are looking at the same laws, but they're interpreting it differently. So it depends, so, but it's all good. If you need anything, just let me know. I'm here at your disposal, and it was great to be here. Thank you so very much for the invitation. The conversation we had was amazing. I would have never imagined it to be this way, and I'm very, very grateful for you and the organization that you guys have formed. So I'm very happy that you're out there. I'm watching you, so let's keep up the good work and have more people coming.
Oh,
So
thank you so much. That means absolutely so much to me. And I am just so inspired sitting here with you and really learning about your life's journey, but also your entrepreneurial journey that has just lit a fire inside of me, honestly. And it's just so incredible to be able to get this one-on-one time to speak with you and then also bring this conversation to the world. And yeah, it's probably going to be on YouTube forever. So, people are going to be tuning in, and I'm just so grateful that you were here to speak to us today, and for the audience, for the entrepreneurs, for everyone. I hope you folks took away a lot from this episode, and yeah, I'm just so grateful.
thank you. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.